Good evening and welcome to South Carolina ETV and South Carolina Public Radio's live broadcast of the 2024 State of the State Address. I'm Gavin Jackson at the State House in Columbia. In just a few moments, Governor Henry McMaster will enter the House chamber here to give his annual address to a joint assembly of lawmakers. This is the governor's 7th State of the State Address, and it comes 3 weeks after he released his executive budget, laying out his spending priorities for lawmakers. We expect him to discuss economic development, workforce development, improving education, and much more. This is the governor's chance to really impress upon lawmakers his priorities and for the coming legislative year, which many times goes hand in hand with the Republican majorities here in both the House and the Senate. Now, we always talk about this, but such cooperation has been a hallmark of McMaster's working relationship with lawmakers. Now we're going to go into the House chamber where House Sergeant at Arms Mitch Dorman is about to introduce the governor.
The Joint Assembly will please come to order. Please come to order. Sergeant.
Our Honorable Governor and his escort committee has arrived.
Members of the Joint Assembly, please remain standing to receive His Excellency, our Governor, and his distinguished escort committee.
There's the governor walking into the House chamber here. The governor's walking on into the House chamber. He's shaking hands with his escort committee. All 124 House and 46 Senate members are invited to attend this annual address, as well as dignitaries, members of the judiciary, and there are dignitaries also in the balcony that were invited to this. So yeah, we see the governor walking in right now. He's shaking hands. You can see Senator Nikki Setzler with him and some other folks as he's taking his time. Usually sometimes he makes it down the aisle a little bit faster than normal, but he's really taking this moment in. Again, his 7th State of the State Address, and we're going to hear him talk a lot about different things like he always does. It goes for about 45 minutes long, and we're going to hear the governor talk about even judicial reform like we've been talking about in past off session, I should say, because there's been a lot of discussion about reforming the judiciary here. We're one of 2 states that has the State House, the General Assembly, select our judges, so there's discussion about how to reform that a little bit. That'll be something that he'll be talking about in his address. And we see the governor there making his way up to the dais in the House chamber. Good attendance up there. And he'll be introduced by Senate President Thomas Alexander. You heard from him a moment ago, and he'll be giving those remarks shortly. So working his way up to the dais. And like we said, this is about a 45-minute long speech, and then after this speech, we'll have the Democratic message from Lake City Democrat Representative Roger Kirby. And then after that, my favorite part of the show, we'll have reaction from lawmakers. So stand by for all that. We're about to get underway here at the State House in Columbia, where the governor's going to give his 7th State of the State Address before a joint assembly of lawmakers in the State House. And the next voice you're going to hear is Senate President Thomas Alexander introducing the governor.
That's just a nice evening. Appreciate you so much. Great crowd. Yeah. Be seated. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of this joint assembly and honored guests, I am proud to present to you the Honorable Henry Dargan McMaster, our governor of the state of South Carolina. Governor, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. I appreciate everyone being here. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the General Assembly, my fellow South Carolinians, we are here tonight to address successes, challenges, and opportunities. But first, as in prior years, I'd like to recognize those in uniform whom we lost in the line of duty in 2023. Sergeant Ricky Lydell Green, Jr. of the South Carolina Department of Corrections. Deputy Jacob Eric Selrin of the Richland County Sheriff's Office. Officer Matthew Logan Hare of the Easley Police Department. Lieutenant Michael Charles Wood of the Newberry Police Department. Specialist Jason Reed Haven, South Carolina National Guard. Firefighter James Michael Muller of the Irmo Fire Department. K-9 Agent Rico with the State Law Enforcement Division. I attended that funeral and many others that I can. And when Rico had his funeral, I've never seen so many people at the police academy. And there wasn't a dry eye in the place. We got a great state. So to the families and loved ones of these brave South Carolinians, we offer our condolences. We are eternally grateful for their service. I'm delighted to have with us once again tonight our First Lady, my bride Peggy, our son Henry Jr. Y'all stand when I call you. My wife Peggy, we'll start with you. She's up there. I appreciate that. I'll call them all, then we'll clap again. Our son Henry Jr. and his wife Virginia. Their 16-month-old daughter, our granddaughter Margot Gray, is at home, and our daughter Mary Rogers and her husband Sam Herskovitz is here. Sam's from San Francisco, but fortunately they moved to Columbia and then to Charleston, so it's okay. Their 19-month-old son, James Dargan, is at home. We're glad you're here. And by the way, I've told those children that their mama and I know where those babies come from, and we're waiting on some more right now. Also, no pressure. Our Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evatt and her husband David are here tonight with our state constitutional officers. Please stand and be recognized. Thank you. And finally, will the members of the best cabinet in the nation, South Carolina, please stand and be recognized. Cabinet members. If you're looking for the A team, there it is right there. Yes, sir. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the members of our Supreme Court in attendance tonight, including Chief Justice Beatty, who will retire this summer after more than 7 years as Chief Justice of our Supreme Court, more than 30 years of service to our state. We look forward to working with our next Chief Justice, John Kittredge. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your presence. We thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe there's no high honor on earth than being selected by the people who know you best to serve in positions like this. I thank you, and I will not let you down. We will continue to act boldly, think big, and continue building on our successes. My question, what are our priorities now, And what will our magnificent state look like in 100 years from now? The world knows that South Carolina has great people. Our quality of life and cultural heritage, abundant natural resources, and prosperous economy make us unique and offer enormous opportunity. Our booming economy in 2023 once again created a record budget surplus over $1.64 billion, with over $9.21 billion in capital investment and 14,120 jobs. 2022 was equally grand, with over $10 billion in capital investment. Just since 2017, we've announced over $36.4 billion in new investments and 86,000 new jobs. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, South Carolina led the nation in population growth last year. Also, according to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysts, our personal income growth rate ranked second in the country at 4.9% through the third quarter of 2023. We are firing on all cylinders. South Carolina's tourism industry continued to thrive in 2023, meeting or exceeding the record-breaking tourism growth of earlier years. South Carolina was named as one of the top 5 golf destinations in the world and best in the country for 2023, according to the International Association of Golf Travel Operators. Ours is the only state in the United States to make this list, sharing recognition with Cyprus, Dubai, Los Cabos, and Thailand. This reputation was enhanced in 2023 by the announcement of a new PGA Tour tournament, the Myrtle Beach Classic, which will debut in May, joining the prestigious RBC Heritage Tournament held the month before on Hilton Head Island. Since 1950, Darlington Raceway, the track too tough to tame, has provided generations of NASCAR fans with spectacular memories, breathtaking finishes, and a lifetime of stories to be told and retold. The Mother's Day and Labor Day NASCAR Cup races are South Carolina's largest professional sporting events, generating over $118 million in economic impact to the state. You have to see it to believe it. Once again, Charleston was named the #1 city in the South by readers of Southern Living in 2023, and the #1 city in the United States by Travel and Leisure readers for the 11th year in a row. Hilton Head Island was again named the #1 island in this year's Condé Nast Traveler Reader's Choice rankings of the best islands in America. And Greenville's Unity Park was recognized by Reader's Digest magazine as one of the, quote, nicest places in America. No surprise to us. I'd like to recognize several of the businesses which announced their confidence in our people, by their substantial capital investment in 2023. If the leaders will please stand as I name your company, we will respond when you're all standing. In Richland County, Scout Motors will revitalize an iconic American brand as an all-electric, next-generation truck and rugged SUV with a $2 billion investment and 4,000 jobs. President and CEO, Mr. Scott Keogh, will please stand. And hold it. They love you, Scott. They can't help it. In Charleston County, Albemarle Corporation will invest $1.3 billion with more than 300 jobs for a lithium hydroxide processing facility. CEO, Mr. Kent Masters, will you please stand? Stay standing, please. Thank you. In Sumter County, EVAC Magnetics investment of more than $500 million in creation of 300 jobs will produce rare earth permanent magnets and will help secure the United States domestic pipeline for these rare earth magnets, the only such facility in the Western Hemisphere. CEO, Mr. Eric Eschen, would you please stand? In Lawrence County, ZF Transmissions Gray Court is expanding its operation for the growing and evolving mobility industry with a $500 million investment and 400 jobs. Vice President and Plant Manager, Mr. Tobias Brugger, will you please stand, sir? In York County, Politis is relocating its corporate headquarters and semiconductor manufacturing operations to South Carolina with a $443 million investment and 405 new jobs. Vice President of Global Facilities, Mr. Gerald Knowles, will you please stand? Thank you. In Richland County, Serba Solutions will build a state-of-the-art flagship operation to produce lithium-ion battery materials with more than 300 new jobs and more than $300 million in investment. CEO, Mr. David Klineski, will you please stand? In Spartanburg County, Milo's Tea Company, a family-owned beverage company, will establish operations with a $130 million investment and 103 new jobs. CEO, Ms. Tricia Walwork, will you please stand? And also, our Secretary of Commerce, Harry Lightsey, and his remarkable team, which worked around the clock to produce these successes, please stand. Thank you. We thank you all. We thank you all. You have all made the right decisions. We boomed in 2023, and we're going to boom again in 2024. How about power? We need power. South Carolina is a national leader in advanced manufacturing, as we know. And now we're leading the way in the new and innovative electric vehicle and battery manufacturing industry. We are home to 4 major electric vehicle manufacturers, major international EV battery manufacturers, the nation's largest EV battery recycling facility, and many other industries in the electric vehicle manufacturing supply chain. Our leadership is displayed in the South in the SC Nexus for Advanced Resilient Energy Consortium. We call it SC Nexus. It was developed by the Department of Commerce. This consortium was developed in collaboration with our research universities, technical colleges, state agencies, the Savannah River National Laboratory, economic development nonprofits, and private businesses. It is the culmination of groundwork laid in prior years through collaborative private-public initiatives. This cooperative spirit produced our EV working group, a, quote, one-stop shop to recruit and assist with electric vehicle investment and manufacturing in the state. It also produced the Power SC, Energy Resources and Economic Development Interagency Working Group. This group leads the effort to coordinate the state's energy stakeholders to ensure that they have the energy necessary to meet the needs of our future. We know that we will need more. The question is, how much power will South Carolina need? And another is, how will it be produced and transmitted? Recently, SC Nexus won the U.S. Department of Commerce's Economic Development Administration's designation as one of the regional technology and innovation hubs, which allows SC Nexus to apply for federal funding. Out of over 400 applications, South Carolina was one of the 31 finalists selected. As a federal tech hub, SC Nexus will compete for federal grant funding valued between $40 and $70 million annually. My executive budget includes $15 million to support SC Nexus and serves as the state match required for this competition. We are going to win. And you will love this story. We put together a group and went to Washington and met with Senator Graham and the rest of the delegation, Senator Scott. We had the universities there, the technical college there. We had state, USC, Clemson. Everybody was there. We could hardly fit into the rooms. And we explained exactly to everyone exactly what we were doing, because we'd already started in this area of power, as you know from what we discussed a moment ago. Well, we thought we had our act together. We came back, and a couple of weeks later, we got a call from Secretary Raimondo, who is in charge of the Department of Commerce. It is Department of Commerce that will be making the decision. Well, we were ready for the call. We knew it was coming. So we had the conference with Secretary Raimondo, and on our end of the line was Senator Lindsey Graham, Congressman Jim Clyburn, and yours truly. And so we recited the facts. We explained it all, what we were doing and how we'd already anticipated this and were way ahead of everybody else. Towards the end of the conversation, Senator Graham, as usual, started cutting up. And before long, we were laughing and joking and just having a delightful time. And before she hung up, Secretary Raimondo says, "This is quite unusual. I have never had a bipartisan conversation like this in my career." I said, "Well, that's the South Carolina way." We know the demand for trained EV workforce is outpacing the number of qualified applicants. Manufacturers like BMW, Mercedes-Benz vans, Volvo cars, and Scout Motors will need a highly specialized and trained workforce of almost 20,000 South Carolinians, and they'll need them soon. To meet this demand, my executive budget recommends $50 million to create specialized EV training institutes at our technical college campuses, which are, by the way, the best technical college campuses in the United States, and everybody knows it. Let's talk about unions for a moment. One thing we do not need is more labor unions in South Carolina. We've gotten where we are without them, and we do not need them now. We are a right-to-work state. We have the lowest union membership in the country. We have worked hard and carefully through education, training, and business recruitment to earn our record prosperity, and we will continue to preserve it and enhance it. However, our prosperity and that of generations of South Carolinians to come face a clear and present danger from the big labor unions. They have crippled and distorted the progress and prosperity of industries and cities in other states. You are familiar with the Rust Belt. It has taken years, but they've managed to do it. And now their membership is at an all-time low and failing. So now they're looking at us and other booming southeastern states, none of which want or need labor unions. In 2021, the International Longshoremen's Association sued the maritime shipping carriers for calling on the Port of Charleston's state-of-the-art Leatherman terminal. Over the past 2.5 years, what started as a secondary boycott to force the State Ports Authority to cede long-held state jobs to union labor has devolved into a broader threat to our current and future prosperity. The cranes at that terminal and others are run by state employees. They cost over $10 million each, and it takes years to learn how to run them. That's why we have our people, our state employees, running those cranes. Secondary boycotts are illegal. The ILA's secondary boycott was initially rejected, but later resurrected by President Biden's appointees on the National Labor Relations Board. We have taken the fight all the way to the United States Supreme Court, which I believe will understand the dire implications of this conduct, uphold the law, and rule in our favor. Our aerospace, vehicle, and tire manufacturers are no longer the sole targets for labor organizers. No. Our thriving hospitality and tourism industry along our coast now finds itself a target too. It seems that no business or employee in South Carolina is safe from the disingenuous campaigns and destructive impacts of union infiltration. No one should bargain their prosperity under threats of union boycotts or coercive pressure campaigns. We will not let our state's economy suffer or become collateral damage as labor unions seek to consume new jobs and conscript new dues-paying members. And we will not allow the Biden administration's vigorous pro-union policies to chip away at South Carolina's sovereign interests. We will fight. Ladies and gentlemen, we will fight all the way to the gates of hell, and we will win this battle. Thank you. We're in good fiscal shape, superior. We have the largest rainy day reserve fund balance and the lowest amount of general obligation debt than any other time in recent memory. Once again, I'm recommending the General Assembly put additional funds into the state's rainy day fund, $54.3 million, so that the fund maintains a balance of $1.16 billion, which is equal to 10% of this year's General Appropriations Act. Till a few years ago, South Carolina had the highest personal income tax in the Southeast and the 12th highest in the nation. No more. 2 years ago, I signed into law the largest income tax cut in state history, which will cut the rate to 6% in the next few years. Accordingly, my executive budget recognizes this year's $99 million scheduled cut to the income tax rate, dropping it from 6.4% to 6.3%. The State Board of Economic Advisors will soon issue an updated revenue forecast. If future revenues allow, I ask the General Assembly to speed up the income tax cut schedule and let taxpayers keep even more of their own money. As we seek prosperity through our expanding economy, we must constantly be alert to detect, avoid, and remove obstacles to its health and vitality. Our laws and regulations provide guidelines for that prosperity, and our civil justice system provides enforcement of these guidelines and redress for injury. Yet, our rules on joint and several liability have introduced an element of uncertainty into our business arena, and uncertainty is the enemy of sound business. We must find a common sense formula which will provide accountability and just compensation without damaging our economy, and I know we can do it. On courts and judges, we must also ensure that the public has confidence in all of our state's judges. Circumstances and events continue to raise questions. It is past time to provide full transparency and accountability to the magisterial selection process, which provides, as you know, the bulk of our judges, over 300 in number across the state. Our Constitution provides that the governor appoints magistrates subject to the Senate's advice and consent. I have instituted a new procedure requiring magisterial candidates to complete more detailed applications and to waive confidentiality protections for and to authorize the release of records related to any attorney or judicial disciplinary proceedings. This application and screening process closely aligns with the processes used by Senate committees when scrutinizing statewide appointments submitted to the governor, and also by those of the Judicial Merit Selection Commission when evaluating judicial candidates for election by the General Assembly. As for our circuit and appellate courts, South Carolina is one of 2 states where the legislature chooses the judges by election. Being unique in itself signifies neither good nor bad. It is the confidence in the process that counts. The people are watching not only how the General Assembly screens and selects judges, but also whom the General Assembly elects to these critical positions. The rule of law is a cornerstone of our society and our constitutional republic. We need judges who understand the proper judicial role, who appreciate our constitutional structure, and who interpret the law as it is written rather than as they wish it were written. As the U.S. Supreme Court rightly begins to return issues and authority to the states that were never granted to the federal government to begin with, it is essential that the General Assembly elect qualified, intelligent jurists who can carefully analyze the important and challenging questions that will be raised with increasing frequency in our state courts. To properly provide for a separate and independent judiciary, the currently unrepresented executive branch should play a role in selecting judicial candidates before the General Assembly exercises its constitutional authority to elect judges. I suggest that our founding fathers prescribed a method for judicial selection that has served our nation well and with which our people are quite familiar. Gubernatorial appointment of all judges with advice and consent of the state Senate requires no reinvention of the wheel, will inspire the confidence of our people, and will encourage more excellent attorneys to seek public service. As for infrastructure, our state roads, bridges, highways, and interstates are the arteries of our prosperity. Our rapid growth is outpacing their capacities. Continued big, bold, and transformative investments are imperative. The 2023 SCDOT Annual Accountability Report highlights the need to repair, rehabilitate, and rebuild many of the nearly 9,000 bridges on our primary and secondary roads. Some are over 80 years old and showing it. Some are in such a state of disrepair that the required restrictions render them useless for commercial trucking, school, buses, or fire trucks. Accordingly, I recommend $500 million in surplus funds from the Homestead Exemption Fund be appropriated to the South Carolina Department of Transportation for emergency bridge replacement and repairs. This, ladies and gentlemen, will keep us moving. On another note, as you know, after nearly 30 years of service to the state of South Carolina, the marvelous Christy A. Hall, the Secretary of the South Carolina Department of Transportation, has announced her retirement. Secretary Hall will be remembered as one of the greatest transportation secretaries in our state's history. Her unparalleled expertise and relentless work ethic have allowed the department to flourish under her leadership. Whether responding to natural disasters or spearheading transformative infrastructure projects, she has consistently delivered for the people of South Carolina. She thinks ahead and leaves a legacy of excellence. She's placed the agency in a position to continue driving our state forward for years to come. Highlights of her career with SCDOT include restoring the agency's finances and financial reputation, developing and leading our strategic 10-year plan, and accelerating critical interstate widening projects. Secretary Hall has been recognized for her ability to work with industry partners to deliver results on major infrastructure projects. In addition, she has helped lead our state through a number of disasters, including the floods of 2015, Hurricane Matthew, and Hurricane Florence. Under her leadership and in partnership with law enforcement, South Carolina executed its first fully successful interstate lane reversal during a coastal evacuation. Madam Secretary, will you please stand and be thanked and recognized? Thank you. Environment, our precious environment. I ask again the question, what will South Carolina look like in 100 years? We've seen what's happened to some other states. They didn't plan wisely. They didn't think ahead. When those things are gone, they're gone. Our mountains, beaches, sea islands, lakes, and marshes are among the most beautiful in the nation. This land, as noted by the explorers for kings and queens centuries ago, is lush, fertile, and brimming with abundance, flora and fauna. Our incomparable heritage, both cultural and environmental, distinguishes our state and people from others, and all possess a strength and beauty we must never lose. Fortunately, economic growth and the preservation of our shared heritage are not opposing objectives which must be balanced as in a competition, one against the other. Instead, they are complementary, intertwined, and inseparable, each dependent on the other. To strengthen one is to strengthen the other. We cannot allow our state's culturally and environmentally significant structures, monuments, lands, islands, and waters be overcome by development, mismanagement, flooding, erosion, or storm damage. It is our duty to preserve and protect our history, our culture, and our environment, and the public's access to them before they are lost forever. We have a veritable army of people in public and private organizations dedicated to these goals. Some of you may remember the cautionary lyrics of singer-songwriter Joni Mitchell. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Some will remember that. Accordingly, I'm recommending that $33 million be appropriated to identify and preserve culturally or environmentally significant properties, provide disaster recovery and flooding mitigation efforts, as well as beach renourishment projects along our coast. K-12 education is the universal key to a prosperous, happy future. Working together, we must continue to invest in public education. The positive impact of our investments is growing. Enrollment in our full-day 4-year-old kindergarten, 4K we call it, program for children in poverty, continues to grow, with 17,437 children now enrolled in a public school, private school, or child care center. For the next school year, an additional 2,500 children are expected to enroll in the program. My executive budget includes $21.1 million to meet this increase in enrollment. This program is increasing the number of children who enter kindergarten ready to learn. Approximately 41% of children who participate in a full-day 4-year-old kindergarten are ready for kindergarten, as compared to 27% of children in poverty who do not participate in the program. We know it works, we know it's vital, and we know if they're going to go to the top, we have to start with education right at the bottom in those young years. In September of 2023, the South Carolina Department of Education released the results of the South Carolina College and Career Ready Assessments in reading and mathematics for school year 2022-23. For the first time in recent history, at least half of the students in grades 3 through 8 met or exceeded grade level standards in reading. Half. This is good news, but it is not nearly enough. We must do more. We must continue to invest in early literacy and professional development in the science of reading. If they cannot read, they cannot thrive. This will ensure that all children can be reading on grade level by the end of the 3rd grade. We know that students who cannot read proficiently by the 3rd grade are 4 times more likely to drop out of high school. Unfortunately, the assessment revealed that only 41% of students in grades 3 through 8 in school year 22-23 met or exceeded grade level standards in mathematics. Therefore, my executive budget recommends an additional $10 million to improve the teaching and learning of mathematics. In addition, this executive budget provides $30 million for the Education Scholarship Trust Fund. Starting this year, these funds will allow low-income parents to choose the type of education, environment, and instruction that best suits their child's unique needs. Regarding teachers, Regarding teachers, we must continue our remarkable progress to raise teacher pay. In school year 2017 through 18, the minimum starting salary for a teacher in South Carolina was $30,113. That is not enough. Today it is $42,500. That is not enough. My executive budget increases the starting pay for teachers to $45,000 for the next school year. My goal is that by 2026, the minimum starting salary of a teacher will be at least $50,000. In school year 2017 to 18, the average teacher salary was $50,182, well below the Southeastern average. In school year 2022 through 23, the average teacher salary was $57,737, exceeding the Southeastern average, which is a 15% increase over 5 years. That is good news, but again, we need more. South Carolina is also making significant progress in providing school-based mental health services to school-aged children. In January of 2022, I directed the Department of Health and Human Services to perform a comprehensive review and analysis of the school mental health services program at the Department of Mental Health. Within 4 months, HHS produced a review of the program and 7 recommendations for removing barriers to getting quality mental health services in our schools. These recommendations were enacted on July 1, 2022, and produced a public-private partnership that offered schools more choice and control in getting school-based mental health services for their students. Health and Human Services also conducted a survey at the start of the current school year to determine the availability of school-based mental health services in South Carolina. The survey showed that the number of school-based mental health counselors available for public schools has doubled from 600 in January of 2022 to 1,209 in September 2023. The ratio was 1 counselor for 300 students then. It's now 1 for 653 students. This survey also showed that students at more than 200 additional schools now have access to mental health counseling, and that all 73 of our traditional school districts now have access to mental health counseling. Let's speak about higher education. We also know that access and affordability to higher education for every South Carolinian is essential to assuring that we have the trained and skilled workforce to successfully compete for jobs and investment in the future and meet all economic challenges. Therefore, this marks the 5th year in a row that I've asked the General Assembly to freeze college tuition for in-state students with an appropriation to our institutions of higher education of $49.8 million. This represents a 4.5 increase as defined by the Higher Education Price Index. I'm also requesting $95 million in lottery funds to South Carolina Workforce Industry Needs Scholarships through the South Carolina Technical College System. Despite the high demand for skills training and knowledge, many institutions across the nation are seeing declining enrollments. To address these challenges, I propose funding for the Education Oversight Committee, which is a nonpartisan committee composed of legislators, educators, and business representatives to oversee a systemic review of our state's 33 public institutions of higher education. This study will provide a systemic review, including an assessment of any advantages from consolidating schools or programs, or reevaluate courses, degrees, and certificates. The goal is to make sure we're meeting our state's future workforce needs. Also, I propose providing $80 million so that every South Carolinian who qualifies for federal need-based financial aid as measured by the federal Pell Grants has sufficient state financial assistance to attend any in-state public college, university, or technical college. Students at private, independent, and historically black colleges and universities will receive an additional $20 million for tuition grants and assistance. Recently, we learned that the Commission on Higher Education had approximately $151.7 million in surplus lottery funds that had not been used for college scholarships. My executive budget recommends allocating these excess funds for additional needs-based grants or to pay for an extra semester of Life, Hope, or Palmetto Fellow scholarships. These one-time funds should be used to incentivize students to complete their undergraduate degree and enter the workforce as soon as possible. My executive budget also provides $44 million for deferred maintenance and health and safety upgrades at our 4-year comprehensive institutions, 2-year branch campuses of the University of South Carolina, and our technical colleges. In addition, I'm proposing a $34 million appropriation for campus infrastructure resiliency at the Medical University of South Carolina, a second $70 million installment for the College of Veterinary Medicine at Clemson University, and a $35 million investment for the Health Science Campus at the University of South Carolina. My executive budget also proposes $1 million for operations and security for the Anne Frank Center and $1 million for the Center of Civil Rights History and Research, both at USC. Our center on College Street at the University of South Carolina, the Anne Frank Center, is one of 4 in the world and is the only one in North America. And finally, for education, I propose continued funding of $20 million for the Battelle Alliance, a collaborative nuclear sciences research partnership between the University of South Carolina, Clemson University, South Carolina State University, all as full partners with the Savannah River National Laboratory also. Truly, we must have the strongest commitment to education we can muster if we are going to succeed. Turning to mental health, our COVID-19 experience revealed that a mental health crisis existed in South Carolina. We knew we had problems, it just wasn't clear how bad it was. That's why 2 years ago, I directed Health and Human Services Director Robbie Kerr to initiate an immediate review of our state's behavioral health funding and delivery system. It became clear from Director Kerr's efforts that the time had come to modernize and restructure South Carolina's siloed healthcare delivery agencies, to wit, the Department of Mental Health, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Health and Environmental Control, and others. The restructuring of these agencies is and will continue to be a complicated legal and financial endeavor involving billions of dollars in federal funding that flows through these agencies for a myriad of services and programs such as Medicaid. Last year, my executive budget and the General Appropriations Act directed the Department of Administration to procure the professional expertise necessary to analyze and provide the General Assembly with a comprehensive plan to restructure these agencies, consolidating and privatizing services wherever possible. The prestigious Boston Consulting Group was hired and has provided their initial report. Unfortunately, their analysis confirmed what many of us feared, and much worse. According to their report, South Carolina has the most fragmented health and human service delivery system in the nation. As a result, for example, 77% of our state's young people with major depressive episodes do not receive mental health treatment, according to the organization Mental Health America. This ranks lowest in the country. Our citizens and families are suffering as a result of this dysfunction. With little or no coordination between the relevant agencies, South Carolinians seeking assistance are forced to navigate through a confusing landscape of offices, agencies, and officials as they seek for a loved one help for or a dependent. Too often they fall through the cracks of a system that does not coordinate, communicate, or collaborate. That is not acceptable in our state, ladies and gentlemen. The time has come for dramatic restructuring, for the consolidation and streamlining of these agencies into one single cabinet agency, one that will develop a strategic plan and operational approach to improve the quality, accountability, delivery of health and human services to the citizens of our state, as the Boston Consulting Group has recommended. This will require us to reimagine how our state provides access to crisis mental health care, physical health care, substance abuse services, disability, and special needs services and assistance to the elderly and at risk. I implore you, ladies and gentlemen, let this legislative session be remembered for the creation of the most effective, efficient, and professional health and human service delivery system in our state's history. Turning to law enforcement, our state law enforcement and criminal justice agencies have begun to stem the tide of personnel loss with recruitment and retention pays provided in the two previous General Appropriation Acts. I propose that we build on this success by providing an additional $17.8 million for recruitment and retention pay raises in fiscal year 2024-25. Invaluable experience should not be allowed to walk out the door. I'm also again proposing a $2,000 state income tax credit for every active law enforcement officer, firefighter, first responder, and emergency medical technician employed by a public entity. Additionally, this budget maintains a proviso suspending the $10,000 retirement cap for anyone enrolled in the police officer retirement system. This will allow retired officers to return to work and fill existing vacancies. Ladies and gentlemen, placing an armed certified school resource officer in every school in every county all day, every day has been one of my top priorities, some of yours as well. At my request, the General Assembly has begun providing funds to hire more resource officers for our state's 1,284 public schools. This grant program has been very successful and has more than doubled the number of officers assigned to a school, going from 406 in 2018 to 1,109 in 2023. I'm recommending an additional $13.4 million to add officers in each of the remaining 175 schools which currently do not have an assigned state resources officer. That is, an armed, trained resource officer. Another subject, animal fighting, especially dog fighting. You've seen some, you've heard about it. Is one of the cruelest criminal activities in our society. Law officers estimate that most of the people participating in this barbaric activity have long criminal records. Some sheriffs have told me if they could locate a fight and throw a net over everybody there, they'd catch half the criminals in the county. In September 2022, a SLED agent was dedicated to combating animal fighting and working in collaboration with other law enforcement officers and agencies. Shortly thereafter, this agent helped execute one of the, and I quote, biggest takedowns of a dog fighting operation in South Carolina history, end quote, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. This executive budget expands upon this success by recommending $566,000 to hire 3 additional SLED agents dedicated to animal fighting. In July 2022, the South Carolina Department of Corrections began utilizing a process that allows mobile phone providers to permanently disable contraband phones and devices. They are detected by a certified contraband interdiction system approved by the Federal Communications Commission. To date, over 875 phones and devices have been disabled at Lee Correctional Institution alone. My executive budget recommends $23 million more to expand this valuable program to each prison in our state. Let's talk about our revolving door. Our law enforcement officers know who the repeat criminals are. They know that they commit over 80% of the crimes. Unfortunately, this is happening every day. People ask, and I ask, how long are we going to allow this to happen? Law enforcement needs our help. They need stronger laws to keep illegal guns out of the hands of criminals and juveniles. And they need new laws to close the revolving door and keep career criminals behind bars and not out on bond. Currently, there are no graduated criminal penalties for illegal gun possession in state law. That means the penalty is the same, small, no matter how many times the criminal gets caught. This provides no deterrent. Graduated felony penalties with no bond will help keep repeat criminals behind bars and not out on bail, where they can and will commit more crimes. During the last year, I've continually called on this General Assembly to act, to take a vote, pass graduated criminal penalties for illegal gun possession so that I can sign it into law. And during this last year, it has become an almost daily occurrence for an innocent South Carolinian to be shot or shot at by a career criminal who should be behind bars instead of roaming our streets with virtual impunity. Ladies and gentlemen, this new law will require no appropriation, no money. All we have to do is vote yes. The only money would be whatever it costs to feed these killers while they rest peacefully behind bars, and I believe we can afford that. Law enforcement, very important in South Carolina. I believe we have the best law enforcement establishment in the whole country. Joining us today is South Carolina Patrol Lance Corporal B.A. Frazier. Where's Lance Corporal Frazier? Corporal, stay standing, and your wife too. I want y'all to look at this man. Around 3:30 a.m. on April 16, 2023, Trooper Frazier was on duty and initiated a traffic stop after witnessing a vehicle traveling at a high rate of speed on Highway 78 in Bamberg County. Think for a minute. These officers, we get up in the morning, put on a tie or something. They get up in the morning and put on a bulletproof vest. It doesn't cover everything. As a Bamberg County Sheriff's deputy arrived to assist, Trooper Frazier was shot by the suspect. What happened was he stopped the car, got the license, went back to check it out, saw that there was a warrant out for the man. So he was returning to the car, and as he returned, and the deputy was joining him, or just arriving, the man in the car pulled up his pistol and shot him in the face. Well, both officers returned fire as the suspect sped away. If you've seen the video, Corporal Frazier was lying on the ground calling in the information about the vehicle while he was bleeding on the ground and firing to try to stop the vehicle all at one time. Following a long chase, the suspect crashed into a home in Branchville. Video from the body and dash cameras of the incident are hard to watch, as I mentioned. Trooper Frazier's professionalism and composure while under fire and getting shot in the face was remarkable. He embodies the best of the Highway Patrol and South Carolina law enforcement. And ladies and gentlemen, the gun that was used to shoot this man, according to the State Law Enforcement Division, is a stolen gun. The assailant, Derek Edwards Gathers, according to SLED, was a repeat offender. For 22 years, he was repeatedly breaking the criminal law and getting arrested. He was out on bond on charges in the state of Georgia. Gathers' long rap sheet includes numerous charges and convictions for trespass, robbery, assault, and battery, dealing drugs, rape, criminal sexual conduct, and 7 charges for criminal possession of a firearm. This career criminal should have been behind bars and not behind the wheel of a car in South Carolina. We are thankful that Trooper Frazier is here with us, but ladies and gentlemen, we cannot continue to ask the best law enforcement officers in the country who risk their lives every year to go out and protect us while they are vulnerable to assaults by career criminals who we know by name, rank, serial number, and crime. Trooper Frazier, please stand up high and let us thank you again. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you again, send me a bill with graduated criminal penalties for illegal gun possession. I will immediately sign it into law. We'll get these people off the streets behind bars where they ought to be so our people and our children can be safe. I've got a lot more I'd like to say, but I guess I'll wrap it up. In closing, to the members of the General Assembly, I say this: let us continue our successful partnership, one that has been based on communication, collaboration, and cooperation. Let us continue to embrace civility and comity through our thoughts, our deeds, and words, and urge our people, especially young people, to be proud of their state. This is the best place in the world to live, work, and raise a family. And let us set our state on a course that will provide the opportunity for prosperity, success, and happiness for generations of South Carolinians. Ladies and gentlemen, the best is yet to come. May God continue to bless America and the great state of South Carolina. Thank you.
Members of this joint assembly.
And the governor has concluded his State of the State address. And now we go to the Democratic message from Representative Roger Kirby of Lake City.
Good evening. I'm Representative Roger Kirby and the Assistant Minority Leader of the South Carolina House. I'm really honored to be here tonight, and I truly appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. My wife, Pam, and I live in Lake City, and I represent South Carolina House District 101, which includes Williamsburg, Berkeley, and Florence counties. I understand that many of you listening tonight have rarely, if ever, voted for anyone outside of your party affiliation. Straight ticket voting has made it far too easy for the parties to dictate the outcome of our elections. We serve in a state house that has a very strong Republican majority. In fact, each year our ability to have meaningful debate has continued to erode under the pressures of what has effectively turned into a one-party system. Now, instead of seeing vigorous debate on important issues, we're seeing infighting within the Republican ranks and continual emphasis on highly inflammatory issues, debated for purely political reasons, not on legislation for the good of South Carolina. Democracy depends upon a system that encourages vigorous debate and seeks compromise. Today, it's obvious that we have moved from this core principle of governance into a system that has lost accountability to the people and subsequently has lost the trust of the people. We Democrats are your neighbors, teachers, your ministers, local business owners, and friends from across all walks of life. There are times when we don't agree with Republicans on policy. We all come from different backgrounds, And we have different life experiences that have shaped the way we look at things. But it's this diversity that makes us great. It's our diversity that makes us stronger. History's taught us that the best solutions to problems are found when consensus is forged, not forced. Only then will we find we have much more in common with each other than we initially thought. There have been strategic and well-funded efforts to instill distrust and fear from outside extremist interests. I implore all South Carolinians to stand against the politics of division and to demand that we return to a system which encourages debate, seeks compromise, and emphasizes policies to address our critical needs, not to acquiesce to the outside interest far removed from South Carolina. We are called to be people of hope, not people of fear. Our forefathers even understood the significance of hope within our state motto, "While I breathe, I hope." We just listened to Governor McMaster's State of the State address, and we are encouraged the bipartisan efforts that have resulted in exciting announcements in economic development and in infrastructure investment for our state. And we appreciate the governor's stated intention to support the crucial work of our state employees and our teachers with long overdue pay raises. It's the Democrats who've been pushing for these measures for years, and we welcome the Republican leadership's willingness to work alongside us to make these initiatives a reality. But I also need to tell you about what the governor didn't address tonight. After more than 20 years of Republican control of the legislature and the executive branch, led by the governor's office, South Carolina finds itself 36th for health care outcomes, 42nd for education outcomes, and a staggering 46th for crime. Accountability for these dismal statistics is lacking. Also lacking in his address was reasoning for the Republican comptroller's miscounting of $3.5 billion, or the education lottery misplacing millions of dollars meant for student tuition scholarships. These are just symptoms of what one-party rule without accountability looks like. An undeniable condition in our state is something that I like to refer to as the Great Divide. There's an essential difference in the quality of life between the haves and the have-nots. Regionalization and urbanization of economic development has created a lack of employment opportunity and increased income inequality for many of our citizens living in rural communities. These trends negatively impact reliable infrastructure, public safety, access to quality health care, access to food security, and access to fully funded public schools. This urbanization of wealth also leaves vast numbers of our unemployed and our underemployed living in these overlooked areas. Access to affordable child care and availability of transportation, or the lack thereof, plays a vital role in our workforce development. But Republicans continue to ignore these persistent problems with inaction. We're blessed with a vibrant agricultural economy, and Democrats fully support our farmers. We understand the important role our farming communities play in national security. Notwithstanding, food insecurity and food deserts persist. Just last week, we learned that thousands of children could go hungry because of a political decision made by the governor unilaterally refusing to participate in the summer food program. Democrats asked that the governor immediately change course and participate in this program for feeding our children. These are your tax dollars and should be used for our own children. Democrats also believe that it's past time, way past time, to expand Medicaid coverage. South Carolina's poor health rankings are exacerbated by the lack of access to affordable health care. Our children's health care outcomes, particularly in our minority and rural communities, ranks near the bottom of 41st of all states. I must remind you, Medicaid expansion is enjoyed by 40 other states. Again, your tax dollars going to other states. Let's make this a bipartisan effort and help the over 350,000 people in South Carolina who are uninsured or underinsured, including 82,000 children. Did you realize there are currently 14 counties in South Carolina with 0 OBGYN doctors? Even with these glaring statistics, Republicans have decided to further restrict health care for women. Democrats stand with South Carolina's women. They are our daughters, our sisters, our mothers, and Democrats will always advocate on their behalf. We find ourselves fighting a new pandemic, one that is born of loneliness and despair. Our rates of drug addiction and suicide are alarming. Democrats have been advocating for significant investments required for treatment centers, as well as for the addition of mental health professionals to allow for enhanced treatment. Our county jails are filled with many inmates suffering from mental health issues or drug addiction, or both. These people need treatment, not a prison cell. We remain one of 2 states, that's right, 2 states, in this country without hate crimes legislation. I implore you, contact Republican senators and urge them to stop blocking this legislation. In conclusion, we do celebrate our many successes in economic development and the economic growth heralded in the governor's address, and we respect and appreciate our governor. Yet we face many daunting challenges which will require Democrats and Republicans working with unity of purpose. We can return to a time when ideas were debated and not dictated, but we need your help. Get involved. Help us rebuild a government that is of, by, and for the people, that protects your rights, your freedoms, and that provides opportunity for all people. That's how we restore trust in government and hope for the future. Democrats stand ready and willing to do the hard work, and we are earnestly asking for your support. Thank you for your time and for your attention. May God continue to bless each of you, and may God bless the great state of South Carolina.
And that was Lake City Democratic Representative Roger Kirby giving the Democratic message there to Governor McMaster's State of the State address. Now we're going to talk to some lawmakers. I have Representative Marvin Pendarvis with me right here. Representative Pendarvis, tell me what you thought about the governor's State of the State address tonight, what stood out to you, what you might want to contrast with.
Well, what I'll say is this, Gavin, South Carolina's economy is booming. And we know from his speech that infrastructure improvements are imminent. And as he would say, the South Carolina is winning, right? And there's a prosperity that we're enjoying in this state that we haven't enjoyed in years. But the question that we have to ask ourselves, and the one that I will pose to the governor, is that prosperity being felt in every corner of the state? Are all South Carolinians enjoying the wins that the governor touts? And I would submit to you, no. South Carolina isn't winning when food insecurity continues to ravage our communities and the governor rejects federal aid that would feed kids during the summer. South Carolina isn't winning when we talk about the economic development successes, but we still see people who are unemployed, and the chasm with income inequality continues to increase. South Carolina isn't winning when we still rank low in education, we still rank low in healthcare, we still rank low in crime. And so, yes, there are a number of good things that are happening in South Carolina, and we commend the governor for what he's done. But the reality is there are people in the state who are still suffering. There are people who I talk to every day in our grocery stores, in our schools, in our churches, in our communities that have real needs, that are waiting and wanting government to work for them and work with them. And that's something that we didn't hear in this speech about a plan to address the needs of everyday working people. That's something that Democrats have stood up and continue to fight for and stand in the gap of, and will continue to do.
And Representative Pendarvis, along those lines, are you seeing any action on any of those issues when you talk about that in the House? It's been about 3 weeks now. You guys have covered a variety of issues. It's been some tense moments. Are you moving forward on any of those agenda items in the House right now?
I believe we are, and I'm proud of the efforts in the House to address issues like food insecurity. Democrats stood tall this week in calling out the governor for rejecting federal aid and introducing legislation that would really call on Congress to allow a waiver for us to be able to opt into the program. We're obviously addressing issues dealing with the economy and making sure that people are able to get back into the workforce. We're addressing needs that are dealing with a number of things that the governor left out. Democrats are really working on some really key pieces of legislation.
Gotcha. And session's just starting, so we'll see where we go. Thank you so much,
We'll see.
Representative. Yeah,
Thank you,
appreciate
guys.
it. Representative Camberell Garvin, good to see you. How you doing?
Great. How about yourself?
Good, good. I was just talking to one of your colleagues there and want to get your take on what the governor had to say tonight, maybe what he didn't say in your opinion.
Absolutely. Well, I think, I've been to 6 of these now, and I think the governor's message was by and large more positive than has ever been before. I thought that he, really rose to the occasion and didn't take some of the red meat that he could have taken. But let's talk about what we didn't hear. We didn't hear anything about women's rights. We didn't hear anything about the hate crime bill that the House has passed and that the Senate has yet to take up. So those are the kind of issues that I would have liked to hear the governor talk about. But I am pleased with the economic progress that we're making. My House district is the home of Scout Motors, the new multi-billion-dollar investment in our state. And we're excited about that investment. And we want to make sure that our workforce is trained and equipped and ready to take on those opportunities. So those are the sorts of things that I think people back home will be happy about and will want to hear about. But there are issues that we certainly didn't hear about, as mentioned before.
And then, Representative, tell me about how the session's going so far in the House and what you guys are focusing on and if it's getting accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Democrats are in a super minority, as many of you all know. And I'll tell you, the issues are becoming more and more partisan. Folks are playing to the base. And when folks are looking, it's an election year. So when it's election season, folks are playing back to the folks back home. The Senate has taken up our controversial permitless carry bill that we passed in the House last year. We took up the transgender student bill. So the first major piece of legislation that we took up was a bill that does not improve the quality of life for South Carolinians. And I think that's shameful. We need to be talking about how do we increase teacher pay? How do we provide access to health care for all South Carolinians? Not targeting social issues that don't move our state forward.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Representative.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much for being here. Thank you.
And we got Representative Ivory Thigpen. Great to see you, sir. Tell me about your thoughts on what the governor had to say tonight in his 7th State of the State address.
Well, I was glad to hear about the investment in public education. One of the concerns is still, how are our children doing? We asked the question, what will South Carolina look like in 100 years? I think a much more relevant question is, how does South Carolina look today? Particularly how the children look. There's an old African proverb and saying is, not how are you doing, not how am I doing, but how are the children doing? And particularly when we talk about funding for food over the summer and our rejection of federal dollars, that doesn't say the children will be doing so well. And even when we talk about the Education Scholarship Trust Fund and the constitutionality of it, and even though it's in its infancy going to address low income, I wonder how many low income, even if it is deemed constitutional, will have truly access to it. With no stipulations on enrollment or who they can and cannot accept. The reality of it is, even with the method of web-based enrollment, how many impoverished or economically disadvantaged families will really have access to it.
That voucher program that you talked about that got passed last session.
And so as we talk about SROs, and I do believe our schools need to be safe, I think the majority of our investment should be in those students and those kids, particularly those ones who are in impoverished areas, because we know what the statistics say. We know that we believe that, yes, the state is doing well, but it has so much more potential. We have to be concerned with the full spectrum of the citizens of South Carolina, that is from the wealthiest to the most disadvantaged. And I think we could have heard a little bit more about infrastructure and lifting up those who need the most help. You know, the other thing that I say is, you know, I really wanted to hear a second year in a row something about hate crimes. I mean, we still are, in my humble opinion, ground zero for 21st century most heinous hate crime. And we know the Mother Emanuel story. And it was a sitting senator who ultimately, in my opinion, got assassinated, right? And our response has not met the measure of the time, and we are one of only 2 states without hate crime legislation. I think there can be pressure put on the Senate to pass this to make South Carolina safer. Because when we talk about a safer South Carolina, a more diverse South Carolina, a more equitable South Carolina, you're talking about a South Carolina that not only booms economically, but allows everyone to have access to opportunity.
Gotcha. Thank you, Representative Thinker. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you
it.
so much.
Yeah, thanks. Representative Annie McDaniel, we have another Democrat with us. How are you doing tonight, ma'am?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Tell me what you thought about the governor's speech, his 7th State of the State address here.
Well, first let me say I was honored to be part of his escort team, but that does not mean I agree with everything that he said and everything that he wanted. I think there are missed opportunities. I think some of the items that he mentioned in his speech, I think he probably should have been considering the whole entire state and not just portions of the state.
And then what about when we look at what's going on in the House of Representatives right now? How do you feel like this session's shaping up? It's the last year of this 2-year session. How are things going so far 3 weeks in?
Well, I'm sad because things are still being focused on people's ethics and how they live their lives, and not being focused on the things that are missing in the state. We're not focusing on hate crime. We're not focusing on the fact that he chose not to take money so that these children can have food while they're out of school, as they have been in previous years. We're not focusing on the fact that we spend a whole lot of money on treatment of illnesses in the state and not enough on prevention. No focus on Medicaid expansion and what that would do for the state, when for every dollar we spend, we get 75 cents back on that dollar. So there's just so many missed opportunities.
Yeah, we have a couple more months to go, so we appreciate your time, Representative McDaniel. Thank you.
All right.
We got Representative Wendell Gilliard with us.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, sir. How are you doing?
Doing fine, doing fine.
I was talking to some of your colleagues, your Democrat colleagues, and a lot of folks are bringing up the hate crimes bill, which you've sponsored. We saw that go through the House last year. It's stuck in the Senate. Tell me about that, what you think, where you want to see that go at this point still.
Well, definitely, I wanted to see it become law in the state of South Carolina. As you well know, we are one of 2 states that don't have a hate crime law, South Carolina and Wyoming, and we have to get out of that category. But I was very saddened about the State of the State speech tonight. We didn't hear anything about not only hate crimes, but women's rights, the homeless population, the gun violence here in the state of South Carolina. And how dare anybody, anywhere, that have to put on union-made shoes, drive union-made cars, get up to a state podium, taxpayers' podium, and damn unions. He owes the unions an apology. It's just that simple. He has awoken a sleeping giant. And I invite all unions now to come to the state of South Carolina because of the insult. This is a rallying call for any union or non-union member.
The governor talking about chasing them to the gates of hell, kind of talking about fighting against the Biden administration. Talking
And
about
we're trying to get the workers out of gates of hell. That's why they're now calling and beckoning unions to come to the state of South Carolina. How in the hell a leader here is going to endorse insurrectionists? The founder of the insurrection.
Yes.
How you going to endorse somebody like that and say you're for the people? Donald Trump should be in jail. Bottom line. If you're a friend of Donald Trump's, then you're an enemy of
again,
anybody in the greatest country
kind of
in the
deviating
world.
from the governor's speech there to
Yes.
who he endorsed, but I know what you mean. But
Yes.
Representative Gillard, tell me again where you think things are going in this session, other issues besides hate crimes. Anything else you want to see accomplished this year?
Well, definitely, we need to be talking more about education. We need to be talking more about giving our educators $70,000 minimum. You're not going to stop the exodus by throwing pennies and dimes at a situation. It's a great exodus here in the state of South Carolina. We need to talk about how we're going to help our law enforcement resolve the gun violence that's everywhere in all these counties in the state of South Carolina.
Gotcha.
My God, we need true leadership. We need leaders with backbone. So I invite everybody to get the hell to the polls. Welcome to America. You want change, get to the polls. That's what I would say.
All right,
okay?
Representative Gillard, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate
You're
it.
more than welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we got South Carolina Public Radio's Mayan Schechter with us. You can hold this microphone. I think you know how to use it.
It's always good to be here.
Mayan, we have a couple minutes to kill right now, and I just want to ask you what stood out to you. I've been talking to a lot of Democrats who came up here and told me what they thought about the governor's address, not talking about hate crimes, not talking about school feeding programs for kids over the summer. But what stood out to you in the governor's speech? It was about an hour-long speech.
Yeah, and I think my opinion might be shared by most of the other reporters around the world. I've been seeing a lot of headlines already on what he said about labor unions, blasting this labor dispute on the coast with dock workers in the port, and saying that he's going to fight to the gates of hell. Probably the strongest language, the spiciest language that he used tonight, talking about that ongoing court dispute. But he also touted a lot of the economic investments, and very proud of the state, asked lawmakers to also protect the coast, put more money to protect other areas of the state, wetlands, etc. So those were, I think, some of the big takeaways from tonight. I mean, he obviously highlighted his usual things from his executive budget, more money for law enforcement, more money for SROs in schools, higher education, things like that. So we got the greatest hits, but we also got some new spicy takes from the governor tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of put Nikki Haley's kicking the unions with my heels to shame by talking about chasing the unions to the gates of hell. So kind of unexpected, but he did have an audience, right, of a lot of folks in the electric vehicle community, industry, I should say, that were here. Again, Scout Motors, you have a lot of other battery plants that are in the state producing all the necessary materials for these EVs. Even though EVs have gotten some fire on the national stage from Republicans, you hear a different message here in the State House where we're embracing it because of all the money, all the jobs that these EVs are creating in the state.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot to be proud of in South Carolina, and obviously the governor highlighted that statewide, also here in Richland County. But he started off his speech with that and then turned very quickly to here are all the issues that are going on. So despite all these huge economic investments, historical economic investments, we still have some pretty big gaping holes of needs in this state, whether it's education or law enforcement. So it was an interesting mix of here are all the great things that have happened, but we got some things that we need to also fix.
Yeah, you got to put some spice in there. We got about 2 minutes here, Mayan, and I want to ask you about the budget. We're talking about extra $1.6 billion, I think, something like that. He's proposed a variety of different things when it comes to teacher pay raises, law enforcement pay raises. I think there's even a proposal for merit-based for state employees. So a lot of different things, a lot of different needs. Anything else that stuck out to you, what you saw in his executive budget that he released earlier this month?
Well, I think just in general, overall, it's important to remember that this governor has a very strong relationship with particularly the House of Representatives, which, as you know, is who crafts the budget first every single year. That relationship is key. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean everything that the governor asks for is going to be reflected in the state budget, but certainly having that good relationship really helps kind of smooth things out down the line. I know he's asked for more money for bridges, for example, I think $500 million, something like that. Will that happen? I'm not sure. Budget writers seem very thrilled
Maybe
about
a going
it.
away present for retiring SCDOT Secretary Christy Hall, perhaps?
Potentially. Girl needs a going away present, right?
I mean,
right?
she did get that 10-year plan off the ground.
did.
She got the gas tax off the ground. A lot of folks don't really talk about that, but that's what's driving the growth in the state, of course.
Quite literally, no pun intended.
Wrap up here, but I'm going to go ahead and do a closeout. Mayan, thank you so much for talking with us and filling some time here.
Thanks, Gavin.
And we're going to go ahead and say goodnight with our folks. That concludes our coverage of the governor's State of the State address here at the State House in South Carolina and Columbia. But our coverage of the State House doesn't end here. We have gavel-to-gavel coverage every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on SCETV, and you can stay informed on the latest State House action by listening to the South Carolina Lead and South Carolina Public Radio. And join me Friday evenings at 7:30 for This Week in South Carolina for insight and coverage on the top news of the week. I'm Gavin Jackson, and from all of us here at SCE TV and South Carolina Public Radio, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe and good night.